gentlemen, you are more than welcome to another episode of the Coffee to 11 show, brought to you by wigwam.ie SME peer support. This is episode 66. Can you believe it? Episode 66. Delighted to celebrate episode 66 with my good friend of many years, and a man I admire greatly, Mr. John Loftus, in the hot seat. John, you're more than welcome. Please say hello, show us your coffee mug.
That's my coffee mug. Can we see it?
We can.
Party animal there. A while ago, that happened now. Having spent the last 100 days in confinement.
We'll hear all about that in a second, John. Let me just introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to this man before we bring him in his own words. So, John Loftus is his name. His business is Midwest Mentoring, and it is the leading business and mentoring network in Munster with 70 plus members providing advice, support and business contacts. The group has loyalty, honesty and decency as core values. It's a network for grown-ups, love that, with several €1 million worth of business being transacted each year. As one member said, this is real networking. This is what I expected when I joined an alternative group. How long established? Since 2016. How many employees? Just John. He goes on to say he's got over 50 years experience, no kidding, in various different sectors. We're going to hear some of the rich stories through that in the next few moments. And something that perhaps isn't obvious from the get-go, John is a transplant Olympian. Stared into the abyss and reinvented himself several times despite reaching death's door at 44 years of age. My goodness. And from airport service to Limerick GAA to nightclubs to financial service to running an incredible network, there is a book in there, and that's for sure. And we might touch on that later. And a huge family man, married to Trish, with two sons, with sons Evan, Craig and Kyle, and daughter Tara Loftus, special lady. A massive part of his life. Blessed with 3 grandchildren, and he knows no sign of slowing down. Huge sports fan, especially hurling, and coached Ballybrown to 2 Limerick senior championships, a Munster and to an All-Ireland. And then tears were shed when Limerick won the All-Ireland in 2018. Boolabus, Limerick, boo. And something nobody knows about John, he shook hands with Muhammad Ali and saw Jimi Hendrix live, as well as being present at the Cream breakup concert at the Royal Albert Hall. Showing your age there, John, but it's wonderful. Delighted to have you here. John Loftus, my friend, thank you for joining us. In your own words, take us all the way back to those early years in Ballybrown, please, and bring us up through your early career. Thank you.
Okay, Colm. First of all, I'm delighted to be on. Let's get that out of the way first. Brilliant. Ballybrown has been my home. I spent almost all my life there. Grew up, went to school in Munster College when there was a college there. In fact, I have the unique record, I would say, a column of, I went to national school in Lorriga and went to secondary school in Munster. Both of them, when they'd seen me, they closed up afterwards. And I went from there. I did some time in UCD before moving into Aer Lingus, where I spent 12 years. I was a flight planner, and I was the guy who did the weight and balance on aircraft. So in that, I got a great opportunity to fly all over the world, really. Did a lot of work in Africa, and not as any other than in aircraft moving from place to place. Aer Lingus at the time used to lease planes to Africa, but they insisted on having their own crew. So as a flight planner, I was in places like Chad and Cameroon and Niger and Tunisia and Libya and other places. And then I did also stints in the States covering holidays in the likes of Boston, New York, Chicago. And I did that for 12 years. I could fly free when I was with Aer Lingus. My only problem was when I got to the place, I never seemed to have enough money. So that was one of the reasons I gave up the Aer Lingus job. I loved it. It was absolutely a fantastic period of my life. I was single then, so as a result, I was free to do anything that needed to be done. Also, which was huge, I was based in Shannon, and if my equivalent in Dublin would have been solely looking after Aer Lingus aircraft, whilst in Shannon I did all the aircraft such as TWA, as they were at the time, one of the hugest airlines in the world, Pan American, another huge one long since gone, Air Canada, Aeroflot, the Russian airline, and even the Cuban airline, Cubana, where if you went out, you'd be knocked with the smell of cigar smoke from 50 yards from the plane. But anyway, so that brought me from to 1981, when I decided to leave. At the time, I was doing a nightclub in what was Pole Darts at the time, out in the 2 Mile Inn, hugely successful. So I decided to take on Monday nights there. And on a Monday night, I was making more money in the one night than I was making in a week with Aer Lingus. So it was time to go. So I left Aer Lingus. Everybody was quite shocked, and got really into the nightclub business, and was very instrumental in making Club Marché at the Green Hills one of the biggest nightclubs, I would say, in the country at the time. We were open at that time 7 nights a week, back in about 1981, 82, and doing 3,500 people a week. Massive. I left on a small little clash, let's put it that way, and I went to the Parkway and opened Close Encounters. Now, Close Encounters was a nightclub totally ahead of its time. We had incredible level of lighting in from London, and at the time, and I would say it's never happened again, I have the magazine, I will show it to you sometimes somewhere, there was a disco weekly or a disco monthly magazine, and we made the full front page. This little nightclub in Limerick was the front page of this magazine, which was worldwide at the time, but was hugely European centered, but printed in the UK. So for a couple of years that went on until the Parkway was sold. So again, I had to pick up sticks and move. So I had nightclubs in such exotic places as Ballybrown during the winter time, when nobody said this was crazy, this couldn't happen. But I had decided, okay, during the summer there was no point in, because everything was happening. But we used to operate in a place called the Ambassador Hotel, and go back there on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock, the place packed. So we would have to wait until everybody was finished their drink. They had to get out. They queued outside to come in and pay to come in, which was an incredible achievement. And then at 500, that was our limit. We had to cut it off, and we had loads of people locked out most of the time. I did another one down in Lismore in Waterford, a place called the Westering Inn in the middle of nowhere between Abbeyfield and Castle Island, where we did some live bands. Joe Dolan as a result, and a lot of others of that ilk were great friends of mine. Dolan and myself had some great sessions till 8 o'clock in the morning, where one particular night he sacked his brother Ben, who was the manager. Ben was the boss, and Ben was bitching away, but Joe wouldn't leave. And Joe told him, don't ever forget who's the boss here. And so you went away. 2 hours later, he was back for Joe again. But anyway, that was Joe.
I love it. Let me come in here. This is great already. We had the Baron of Dublin on a few weeks ago, Baron Benoni Robu, and he has his Joe Dolan story. That's the reason he came to Ireland, was because of a Joe Dolan song, "To Do With You," right? And it's lovely to hear your story. A couple of things, if I may, just before we lose it. The Aer Lingus, the weight and balance thing, you said you were...
Yes, I will tell you a great story on the weight and balance. Weight and balance of an aircraft basically is, you've got to, especially if it's not full, you've got to have because of fuel is so heavy, you've got to balance the fuel in the tanks with where the people are sitting in the aircraft. The full plane, it should fly, because the Boeing make it to do that. But I had one great incident. I was in Shannon on a Sunday morning, and the flight flew in from, I'm almost certain it was Tenerife, with a cargo of tomatoes heading for London. They had to lay off a certain amount of stuff in Shannon and going on to London. And because of the amount of fuel that was there and the tanks that were remained in, we needed more weight on the front. So the only way out of this was to take off 2 pallets of tomatoes and put on 2 pallets of what we call ballast, which are basically stones, rocks. And I remember this coming into the office, this loader was scratching his head like that. Jesus, I can't understand it. I cannot understand it. We are sending 2 pallets of stones to London that they don't want, and we're keeping 2 pallets of tomatoes that they want. He didn't. Now, the plane might have crashed, but as far as he was concerned, we were still trying.
Oh, brilliant. Come here. I was going to gloss over it, but I won't. You said a plane with full tanks properly balanced should fly.
does fly.
Thanks for that, John. I like that.
Well, if it doesn't, I'm blaming Boeing or one of those. Like that goes on my hands.
All right. Anyway, the reason I raised it was I actually thought, because we often hear this, Ryanair, for example, or some airline get into trouble because they move somebody around and they're waffling on about weight and balance. I didn't believe it was a real thing until today. So thank you, John.
And we did it all, Colm, manually. This on charts and what have you. So you had to be fairly accurate.
Slide rule.
Safety is no accident.
Love it. Say that one more time.
Safety is no accident.
There you go. There's a bit of a gem. I love it. Listen, then we were into Paul Dark's close encounters. Was that anything to do with around the time?
Yeah, we had our DJ's booth made up like the spaceship with lights coming out of all sides of it. Unbelievable. This was 1982-83. Limerick. Front page, as I said, of the Disco Weekly or the Disco Monthly. I can't remember, but I have it. I will dig that magazine out of somewhere. I should have brought it today, but I didn't think this would come up.
I love it. And another phrase you used, which I think is lovely, and I'm sure Kathy Mayer is getting well used to it at this stage. You went back to Ballybrown. Everywhere in Ireland, Kathy.
Yeah. Back
in the countryside, you go back.
Yeah.
Went back there. If you went back there of a night, there'd be 500 people queuing with their drinks, wanting to pay to get in. I love it. All right, come here. After the nightclubs, what was next, John?
Next, I was still in the nightclubs, but I was walking along Limerick one day with a very good friend of mine, Jerry Bennis, who afterwards became chairman of the Limerick GA board, stopped me to ask me to buy a ticket for a raffle they were doing. They were at this time going to rehash the Gaelic grounds. They were building this stand, and I said, yeah, I'll take a ticket. I can't remember what it was, but I said, you're doing it all the wrong way. What do you mean? He said, well, I said, what you require is an ongoing raffle. This will bring up so much money, but you've got to stop and start again. So he said, what do you mean? I said, you should have a monthly draw. It should roll on. So he said, would you come and meet our committee and explain that? Yeah, so I went and met the committee, and I went with a small percentage in my head in relation to what I'd look for in relation to this. And it was granted. I mean, I became hugged literally by about 30 people because this clown had come in and said, I will take 10% of what we make in relation to this, which wasn't even 10 to 7.5% or something like that. It doesn't matter. And so they all embraced me. So I took off and took in 1986, this was, and it, out of the blue, it took off and took off very well. And in the Limerick GA at the time, they'd made so many cock-ups with not printing results of draws and things like that, that almost none of the clubs would join. So I had to go away and source agents throughout the county who worked on a commission basis. So we started off with about 7,000 people in our first draw at the beginning of, in January of 1986. And from there, over the next 9 to 10 years, I built that up to 14,500 people. Now, all of a sudden, the people who were delighted to give me 7.5% were not delighted to give me 7.5%. They never started reaching those figures. But they weren't accepting the fact that they were making way more money than they ever thought they'd made. And there's one very famous meeting. I won't go into all the things because we had lots of them. I was accused of earning more than the city manager. And my answer to that was, I'm obviously doing a better job. So that was it. But there was people tearing their hair out. They were absolutely, they couldn't, I mean, like, if I brought you working with me today, Colm, and I gave you a percentage of what I was doing. The bigger the money you made, the more I was making. It made so much sense. No, small minds do not think like that. Anyway, I did 10 years of that, and that ran into my health issues.
Yeah, John, can you take us there if you don't mind?
My daughter Tara, guys, she's special needs. I didn't know that at the time. Was born in 1992, in May of 1992, or sorry, April 1992, the 23rd of April. Following month, she was being christened, and I felt fairly, I could almost say shitty the next day. Put it down to having had too much to drink. Few days went on, and I was not getting any better. Went to a doctor, he gave me a covering antibiotic for, he considered I had some temperature, and then a few days later, all hell broke loose. I won't go into the machinations of it. I woke up at about 7 o'clock in the evening after my wife had insisted I stay in bed for a few days, on fire. Took my temperature. I was just short of 104 degrees, which kills a normal person, kills them very dead. It's okay with a kid, but with an adult, I was 44 at the time. So I spent a weekend I was brought to the regional hospital. I spent a week there where I was under a specialist who seemed to know as much about what was going on with me as a pig would about snipe shooting. He just didn't know. I would have been better off under a car mechanic. Eventually, he brought a guy called Con Cronin, who did save my life. Con had done his training in Beaumont and was an expert in the kidney nephrology department. And he had me moved to Beaumont the following day. Now, the difference between the reception in Beaumont and what was going on in Limerick, which was nothing going on. So a week had transpired, and I had been allowed to get much, much sicker. So in Beaumont, I'm given all kinds of treatment. Anyway, to make a long story boring, I am diagnosed with having good pastures syndrome. Good pastures is a rare autoimmune disease, and the upshot of it all was that there was irreparable damage done to my kidneys. I spent that was in 1992, as I said. I spent from the end of May to the 25th of November, full 6 months, in hospital. During that time, I hit the crossbar on a few occasions. They cured the good pastures, but to cure the good pastures, they take down my immune system. When my immune system was down, I picked up now what they called an opportunistic strain of pneumonia. So this coronavirus has real implications in relation to all that. And now the cure nearly became worse than the disease. I was providing the body, it was antibiotics versus the virus. I was brought to intensive care, 4 days on a respirator, which absolutely I remember nothing of, simply because that part of my life disappeared. I had an out of body experience when I eventually came back. I was 100% certain I was going to die. I remember the morning I was put on the respirator. There was a guy called Shane O'Neill was their respiratory specialist, and he came in and his team around him, and he said, "We're going to give your lungs a rest." I was there thrown on the bed like an old dog, and it had really hit me on that Saturday, because I was a real fighter up to then. This was Monday morning after a Saturday, and on the Saturday what had happened, the nurses were making the bed underneath me. I was in a frame, or whatever you would call it, and they turned me over and they asked me to put my hand on the little rail while they were making the bed underneath me. And I remember not being able to get any grip on the bed. And I remember laying back into the very cold, welcoming sheets, saying to myself, "Who are you fooling? You're dead. You're gone." And I was amazed to be there Sunday, and I was even more amazed to be still alive on Monday morning when this guy Shane O'Neill came in, and he said, "Look, we need to put you on the respirator. It'll give your lungs a rest." I remember being thrown down like that and nodding away as best I could, because the only part of me that was functioning was my brain. And if he had said at that stage, "Colm, we'll put you up there and we'll shoot you," I would have nodded away because I had done all the fighting. I reckon I had nothing left, and that was it. So the next 4 days, they come in, they put on the respirator, and the next 4 days disappeared out of my life. And then I pulled the thing out on the following Thursday, Friday morning. And there was all hell went loose. But I remember at that stage being aware of the fuss, but being aware of the fuss looking down on us. Seeing the heads of and all the guys in white and my body, and I'm looking down there, and I'm there for a while. It seems to be 10 seconds, it could have been an hour, it could have been a minute, it could have been nothing. And then I'm aware of coming back down and being back into bed. And the incredible thing that hit me, because I had 7 lines simultaneously into my arms at the time. My right hand was like a club because so many veins had broken down and what have you in it. But I had 7 lines intravenously, and including one going into my artery so that they could take blood oxygen levels. And the pain that was in those was unreal. But for that few seconds, it could have been a few minutes after I had come back to be me, there was no pain. Unbelievable, no pain, pure peace, no pain.
Let's just come in here and honor you here for that. That is some story, my friend. I've heard it in part before. I've never heard it to this level of detail. And that's some journey. And you know, I think we were all there with you. You know, you described the cold sheets earlier, and then you came back into your body and you described the level of pain and this absolute peace that came over you. So quite incredible, John. Quite incredible. The universe obviously wanted you to hang around for a bit.
Yeah. I couldn't get rid of me.
Or decided to send you back. Tis your man. All right, listen. So thankfully you got through that. You went back into your body. But
yes,
for the listener here, you perhaps picked up that his daughter had been born. Tara, lovely special lady, was born a few weeks, if I'm not mistaken, earlier.
Yes. That was one of the presents I got when I came back out, Colm.
Yeah.
5 or 6 months later, she'd been having a series of little kidney infections, and she'd been taken to her GP, and we'd made an appointment with Liam Carroll. Nothing to Liam Carroll that's down here. Liam was the pediatrician, and Trish was sitting with Tara on her leg, and she every now and then she used to do just this little jump, and she's explaining that Tara was held back in the hospital for 2 weeks after because she had a kidney infection. We were worried just because of my kidneys. No, he said, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about that little jump she did there. And oh, she's had for ages, Trish said. We've had that checked out and it's a nervous twitch. Oh, I'm afraid not. He said, it's much more serious than this. If I'm not mistaken, I've just witnessed one of the very rare things, a thing called infantile spasms. He said, do I have permission to video a couple of those little jumps because they were so rare to show them to? Trish said, of course, no problem. And anyway, she was then brought into the hospital, given doses of steroids and so on and so forth. To make a long story boring, they again gave us a very bleak prognosis, told us that she had less than a 10% chance of ever sitting up. Now, Tara is special needs. She would not have the brain power of somebody of her age. She's 28 now. She's an incredible runner, incredible swimmer, incredible basketball player, and just a joy to have around, and what a great companion to have around while the COVID thing was on in full flow.
And I mentioned earlier, John, that Tara is a very special lady, and she's always called Tara Loftus, by the way. It's never just Tara.
Oh no, she refers to me as John Loftus if she gets anyway angry with me.
John Loftus.
Dead now, but hold on, John Loftus. Yeah.
Ooh, I love it. And she has a job now, isn't that right?
She has. She works a few hours a week, a few days a week in Centra and Clarina, where she is literally where she knows everyone, or everyone knows her at least. So it's brilliant, absolutely fabulous.
John, it's very special. It's very special. You're made of strong stuff. You're made of strong stuff, and of course Trish as well, and the rest of the family.
Oh yeah, well, Trish was the one that really, because given, I lived my own nightmare. But to be watching that, and then we just cleared that, and literally a couple of months later, we have Tara on top of that. I mean, Trish was so invaluable through all that. How she was headed together, how she held herself together, I don't know. A very young family. At that stage, when I was in hospital, at the height of my problems, we had 4 kids, all under the age of 7. So it was tough times.
My goodness, John. Well done. Did she ever admit to going looking for the receipt, by the way? See, could she get a refund? No.
Yeah. She got a raw in the. I'm sure I tried to my best then to make a comeback. Anyway.
John. Listen, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.
No bother. It's something again. That's why I love working for charities and I love being involved. There's only alone yourself there, and not enough of us know that. You can't take anything with you. If you depart the scene in the morning, we get so wound up in stuff that really doesn't matter. You know, when you're there staring at ceiling and or staring and making funny shapes out of the trees outside or whatever else you can see, and you think they're coming in the window to you, or you have no chance of getting up or moving or doing anything. That's the real test of a person. And money means nothing. If you go in the morning, if I had 10 million in the bank at that stage, or 100 million, or a billion million, it wouldn't have made any difference. I would still have had to go through that, what I went through.
Yeah. John, and you mentioned that that's why you're so interested in charity. I see behind your head there, if you can shift over to your right, yeah, we'll see Cleana's Foundation. And of course, with the lovely Brendan Cherry Ring on the show some weeks back.
I see we have Darren on the show there this morning. He's in there, and he works with a great lad who works with Cleona's. Absolutely great guy.
So one of the things that's going to happen when we get to the end of the series is we're going to have a live event, a Coffee at 11 live event, and it's going to be sponsored by the Old Barracks Coffee Roastery here in Bird Hill. Date to be confirmed, but they've agreed to sponsor it, so people will come along on the day and meet all the people. Whoever wants to turn up, you're all very welcome, and they'll buy their coffee and pay whatever they want for their coffee, and whatever goes into the till that day we'll take out and we'll divvy it out appropriately amongst the various charities that have come on. So John, thank you for that. Continued great work. Tell us quickly about Midwest mentoring.
Well, again, yeah, Midwest mentoring came about then. Yeah, I set up. I did so many years in financial advisory, as was with Canada Life before that, with Acorn Life. Then set up Home and Asset Management. Then I left that because I wasn't happy with the way it wanted to be taken by others that were involved with me. And I was coaxed back into the GAA to act as commercial manager and did that for 4 years. During that time, this is the reason I'm bringing this up. During that time, what I did do, in spite of some of the negativity that you have in the GAA, we had an incredible situation at that stage where the 2 most powerful officers in Limerick GAA didn't talk to each other. So I was often the bit in the middle. Don't like being the bit in the middle. But what I did do was I put together, and you were one of the first people at one of those, a very good business network where we had huge crowds, massive, going really, really well. And during that period of time, I can also say one other thing to you. As I'd left the draw way back the way, I had found out as well that the draw which I'd left back in the mid-90s, which I had grown to 14,600 people per week, they had managed to grow it down to 6,900 a week. So again, and they had replaced me with 2 people. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I got tired of the aggro that was at the top table in Limerick GAA, and decided I was going to do my own thing. Spoke to about 20 key people in the Limerick Business Network, and 17 of them came with me. I had my last meeting of the Limerick GA network on the 30th of September 2016, and I had my first meeting down in the Clayton with 17 people on the 1st of October, the following day. So didn't allow too much grass to grow, and from there 17 then to over 70 now in 3.5 years in spite of COVID. And actually since COVID we have increased the group in size.
Boolabus, Sarah, we're joined to get in there with the Boolabus, and absolutely fantastic. So 17 of 20 joined John Loftus in your coup. By the way, there's a coup going on in the cafe here. We just got to be careful.
yeah. I got drifted that there.
The rebels are taking notes furiously. They'll be on to see how you effectively pull off a bloodless coup. But anyway, so coup 17 joined you the following day. It's grown to 70 and it's growing through COVID. Well done, John. Well done. And the ethos behind the group is?
The ethos behind the group is quite simple, again, called honesty, integrity, all the things that matter. I picked the people for the group very carefully. I've turned down way more than I've taken on. Actually, I sat with a guy called Joe O'Connor. Joe O'Connor would be pretty well known within the GA circles as a tremendous motivator. He's a trainer with Limerick. He works with the Tralee IT, and he was looking at joining the group. He was based in Tralee at the time, and it wasn't suitable for him. But he asked me how did I see the group going? So I sat down with him and I said, look, I really believe that out there are so many people like me who have characteristics like me, who have the same drive as me, and I'm looking for those. And I waffled on, which I tend to talk a good bit when I get going. And then he said to me, he stopped, he said, have you ever read a book called Tribes by Seth Godin? And at the time, I'd never heard of Seth Godin. I've never heard of Tribes. Well, he said, in the last 20 minutes, you've written the book. And my idea of that there are people out there, and that's what I've gone for. I've looked for the same characteristics in the people. So I know my people, I know everyone in the group. And the loyalty, the amount of work, especially, again, I've gone, Colm, I hit the wall in COVID. If you had spoken to me about Zoom before Christmas, I'd have considered you were going very quick in your car or you were talking about your camera. That's as much as I knew about Zoom. But for the likes of Keith Wiseman with his fantastic photography, the best photographer, I think, in the country, Ursula McKenzie, Liam Carroll, Donald O'Keefe, who I see on this morning, I see Alec Morrissey, who's also in there. And then when I went over and decided to do Zoom, the help of Padraig O'Dwyer, who's there this morning, and Geraldine O'Brien, who's also there looking in this morning. They have been absolutely invaluable. But this is, again, what they are bringing through, Colm, is the quality that I picked them for. They're showing those qualities and bringing them through, and they're there when they're needed. They're there when I needed them. Brilliant.
Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. Boolabus to one and all of those that have been mentioned by John, and of course all those that haven't been mentioned, but they know who they are. It's just great stuff, John. And you have a strap line, if I'm not mistaken, on the back of your business card, which was fascinating me.
Yeah. To those who understand, no explanation is necessary. And to those who do not understand, no explanation is possible. So in other words, you get what I do or you don't. And if you don't, so what? But if you do, then you're part of what I'm about. You know, again, as I say, Colm, in all these things, I like to keep it simple, like myself.
I love it, John. I love it. You're a breath of fresh air. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
You don't have to answer it because we can.
Oh, yeah.
Because we can pick a number between 0 and 100. How old are you?
I'll be 73 in August.
Oh, there you go. Here you go.
And I was lucky to see 45.
Well done, my friend. Well done, well done. So COVID is good for business, as it happens in your case, and Zoom. John, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I see Liam Lynch here. Liam, you're very welcome. John was one of the audience members the day we got very badly Zoom bombed here in the cafe some months back, and it was terribly traumatic for everybody involved. John was here that day, and I think, John, that was probably your first exposure to Zoom.
Absolutely. But I knew about Liam and Liam's ability.
I have been member of Midwest Mentoring on several occasions, and I've always joined and left strategically for what's going on in terms of my world, and John's been very gracious about that. But of course, when I rang John after that event, he said, Liam Lynch is your man. And he absolutely was. And Liam, you've kept us safe and secure ever since. 12 levels of security that we implement every single day because of what Liam is with. Thank you. John, pleasure. We're going to go to Q&A from the floor. I'm quite sure there's some people there who want to ask you a couple of questions. I hope they're hard. I hope Liam Carroll has a hard question for you. Anyway, before we do that, have you one tip? What would you say to your nearest and dearest about, we're now coming through COVID, thank God.
What I've gained from COVID is this, Colm, or what I've seen in COVID, and it always helps if you, no matter how deep in any hole you are, always try to take the positive, no matter what. And what I have seen during this period has been incredible humanity. People being human to each other again. People being ready to help. People being authentic, real, neighbourly. All the things that matter. What made Ireland great? What could make the world great? Not rantings by an old man in America about making America great. That's not great. Bulldozing your way over people, that's not great. Helping the people up off the ground, that is great. And as far as I'm concerned, if we can hold on to the humanity we've discovered during this period, it'll almost have been worthwhile.
John, that was beautiful. And for a man who today, I think, is your 100th day in lockdown, is that right?
Yes, 100 full days today. I haven't, and I've a problem with one of my eyes, and I have an appointment in Kilkenny with that next Tuesday. That's tomorrow week, and that'll be my first day really getting out there, out among them. But after that, then I hope to have a large Midwest Mentoring meeting out with Daphne out in the Green Hills, probably socially distanced, probably at the end of July or thereabouts, and we'll be really back.
Woohoo! Good stuff. Can't wait. And Daphne, of course, was a guest on the show.
A bit like marriage, called for better or for worse. We'll be there. Anyway.
John Loftus, a real pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, who'd like to ask John a question or comment? Evelyn McAleer, lovely to see you.
Hello, Evelyn.
You're alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentle. Apologies, I was late on today, and I seldom now get on to Colm's coffee mornings, but there was some wee niggle at me to say, get on there this morning, and I came on. I sent a message to Colm, and I says, I know exactly why I've been called to come on here, because you spoke about your near-death experience, John.
Yes.
And as much as GA is a big, strong thing here in Tyrone, I'll stay off the GA thing at the minute. I'm more interested in the other, because I have been speaking to so many people, and that wonderful thing that we all are, that what you even display even in your work in charity, and that tagline that you have, when you understand, there's no need to explain. Can I ask you, my question is, the peace that you felt from witnessing the dance, the body, and then coming back into that, have you found, or do you find that, can you find that again in the human form, that inner peace?
Not to that extent. The feeling, first of all, the looking at my hands, which were all still disformed and disfigured, and 7 simultaneous lines, 4 in one hand and 3, they were all there. There was no pain. That was unreal. And I don't know how long that lasted. Short time, too short, because again, having needles in you like that, it's very similar. The easiest way to is being, it's like being constantly prodded by, or being, somebody have a nettle and they're pulling it up and down your hand, all over the place, and there's no respite at all from this. So to get whatever the number of seconds were with just looking here, and this is me, was absolutely fantastic, unbelievable.
Oh, wonderful. As Colm said, you had
certainly would have helped to drive me on from there.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to see. It's very easy to see that there in what you do now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Evelyn, it's lovely to see you. Evelyn is a very intuitive lady, and it's really interesting. It's great to see you again. Of course, you're welcome anytime. Evelyn was a beautiful guest on the show at one point over the last number of months, and she's got this intuition about her. So it's really interesting to hear her say she felt compelled to come in here this morning and listen to your story. I don't think you have you met in real?
No, we've never, ever.
Perhaps before we came in body form, we may have met, John. You never know.
And we both love the GAA. That's great.
I love it. Only here in the Coffee at 11 show, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
It's great stuff. Actually, we're back to close encounters.
Oh, close encounters. Who was around? There was not around in close encounters there.
Listen, great pleasure, great fun. Liam Lynch wants to come in. Let me just bring Princess Shelley in, and Princess Shelley will bring you in, Liam, if that's okay, if you don't mind. Thank you. Princess Shelley.
Hey, thank you very much, John. The cafe has been alight with lots of comments. Everybody's pitching in, which is lovely. Early on in the conversation when you were talking about the nightclubs that you had developed, Dee Keogh, hi Dee, nice to have you here. She's giving you a wave there, John. Dee says, I'm a blow-in and live in Ballybrown 19 years and your name is legend here. So...
I thought that was too long ago at this stage to matter, but yeah, it was unreal that people would be there drinking. They'd be told by a few bouncers who had arrived at that stage, lads, you've got to finish up now. They'd finish up, go outside the door and queue up to pay to come back in. I mean, that wouldn't have happened anywhere else in the world. That was unique.
Well, you're still a legend there, John. You're still a legend. Yeah. He doesn't know that. So it's a great legacy to have, isn't it? Liam, who we're going to go to in a minute, says Club Marsh and Close Encounters are two establishments I frequented in my dim and distant youth. I also remember the nightclubs of Ballybrown, but only in the summer. So we'll come to you live in just a moment there, Liam. So Debbie Hassett says that when you were saying about the weight and balance of the aircraft, and you said fairly accurate, John, you crack me up. And I saw Colm having a little wobble at the term fairly accurate as well. And then you were saying something along the lines of about only having today and only having one life. You know, it's not a rehearsal is what I often say. And Sarah Ward, who's here every morning, says we only have today, so live it. Very true to what you'd said. So so thank you for that, Sarah, and you're getting a nice round of applause there. Kathy, who is then, she's joining us all the way over in the United States of America in New Hampshire. She joins us, we are her morning cafe as she rises in the morning. And Kathy says, I'm really enjoying hearing your story today. I love your values. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Isn't that lovely, John?
Fantastic. Fabulous. Thanks for her.
Yeah, she comes into us 5 something as she's logging in. So I'm always very grateful for everybody's presence. But the thoughts of logging on at 5 something in the morning, it's great to have you here, Kathy. Debbie said, 73 years young and no signs of stopping. We have so much love and respect for you. That's Debbie Hassett. Thanks, Debbie.
And I look, Debbie is an absolute gem.
I could see then when you were talking, she was
but she's just one of nature's lovely people. I went out there and you couldn't have found, I'm looking at Geraldine and look at Darren. I mean, when you take Darren down there, guys, Darren was 21 when he joined the group, straight out of school, straight out of college, I should say, and he will tell you how much accepted by the group he was, how it has helped him to stand up and talk in front of people. But he's such a great guy himself. Quality.
That's great.
There's no substitute for quality.
That's a fact. That's a fact. And then we have we have Alec coming in, who is also a member of your tribe, as you were saying there.
Oh, yeah.
John is a gentleman, a legend, full of positive advice when required. So, and then just to wrap up before we go to Liam, this is Anne Kristen from Malmo in Sweden. You were speaking with her with the few minutes of banter and crack we have before we went live. She's got to head to work now, but before she did, she left a comment saying, I do also enjoy your story fully, giving me confidence as a mentor and showing off this authenticity through your visible values and also showing a fantastic spirit and humour. Thank you for sharing and wishing you a wonderful day.
Thanks very much. Brilliant. Super.
Isn't that such lovely comments in the cafe, John, and so much love for you and the story and the very rich journey that you've been on. And we're all going to take something different away from that. And that's what makes the cafe such a wonderful place, you know. And I said to Evelyn, it's lovely. She's apologizing that she's here late, but it's not late because it's a cafe and she's popping in on the conversation, and we welcome everybody, whether you have to leave early or whether you don't manage to get here. It just means you're making time. At this point, I will ask you to unmute yourself, Liam, and you can ask your question direct to John. Thank you, Liam.
Yeah, well, actually, it was going to be just the observation. I did not realise that John Loftus had so much to do with the nightclubs of my youth. As I say, like, I remember going to Club Marchés on the night I got my inter-cert results, you know, before the junior cert. I was thinking
Huge,
inter-cert.
yeah.
That was a big night. You know, Marchés were known to be letting in young people.
Huge.
Yeah, exactly, Colm. And then Ballybunion, I didn't realise there was a link there because I spent all my childhood summers down in Ballybunion, so and I went back there several years afterwards, but always in the summer. Yeah. And it was a wonderful spot. Like, I loved it.
Well, I'll tell you, I got married in Ballybunion. Not Ballybunion. That's not correct. I got married in Limerick in St. John's Cathedral, and had the reception in Ballybunion. So I brought 387 people. I had it on a Wednesday because I was very involved in the entertainment game. Most fellas were doing very little on a Wednesday. So from Wednesday to Friday, we had a fantastic time. The best wedding I was ever at.
Good. Wonderful.
And I brought them to Ballybunion. That way they couldn't justify going home. They had to stay. And so I had the Central Hotel on one side of the road and the Ambassador at the other side, and we filled the two hotels.
I love it. I love it. And you know what, Liam, it's lovely when we see a comment come in and then the speaker comes in and we really get to meet the person who's left the comment. So thank you so much for that, Liam. And it's great to put a face to the comment and hear the conversation that takes place between you and John. And I can see James there is laughing and we're all loving it. So a real quintessential cafe. At this point, I'll hand you back over to our host. Thank you very much, everybody, for your valuable contribution. And it's back to you, Colm.
Oh, I laughed. That was just fabulous. Thank you, Princess Shelley. I love that part of the show because, John, I get to listen to what's been going on in the cafe because, you know, when I'm in chat with my guest, you know, that takes all the attention. So that's why we've got this wonderful team who are helping out and making it a very rich experience. So, Princess Shelley, thank you for that. That was just lovely. And Evelyn, lovely to have you back in the cafe. Thanks for your contribution, and Liam Lynch, of course, and everybody who commented. Just gorgeous. But I laughed at your, you know, the royal wedding there, like 387 of a Wednesday back in Ballybunion where nobody could escape.
Stayed on, yeah. There was no going home.
No going home. Sure. No. What do you want to go home for? Great stuff. John, it's a pleasure knowing you. We've known each other for many years now, and it's always a rich experience. We haven't had a chance because we've both been in lockdown to catch up.
We'll make it.
We will absolutely.
There's another man there actually looking in at me this morning, Kevin Downs, who, when I spoke earlier on about the beginning of what I call the GAA business network, which was preceded the launch of Midwest Masonry by about a year and 3 or 4 months. At the very first meeting, there was only 6 people, and Kevin Downs was one of those, and he's been with me all the way. He was just a young man starting off in Cube at the time. He has come on in leaps and bounds. He's an All-Ireland medal winner, and just another great guy. Great guy to know.
Well done, Bull a bus there for Kevin and the team. That was the team of 18, isn't that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Pulled it out of the bag and drew a tear from John Loftus.
Yeah, definitely many tears, but mostly over a few pints, so you know, I become emotional.
Am I not still a young man, John?
Sorry, Kev?
Am I still a young man, am I?
Oh, a young man in my eyes anyway, Kev. You will always be a young fella in my eyes.
Right, John.
You're all youngsters in my eyes, apart from myself and PJ. We are the two the gentlemen of the group. Anyway.
But Kevin, it's lovely to see you, and thanks for coming in and sharing the moment there with John.
Yeah, Can I say one little final thing before I go? What makes another thing called that makes Midwest mentoring? And I'd mentioned it, I touched on it with Darren. And if you move from Darren then to a great friend of yours, Owen Sheehan, these are lads in their early 20s. Myself and PJ, who worked right at the top with Kerry Co-op and a lot of other, a fantastic mentor and a fantastic consultant. But there's 50 years between us and the guys, the young guys, and that we can all knit together, be together and work together and understand each other is fabulous. And I have nothing but the height of praise, especially for young people.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And what's really interesting, because I know John Loftus well as a gentleman and a scholar, he means that, number one, but also, even though the 20-something-year-olds are learning from the 50-year their seniors are also willing to learn from what's going on at the other end of the scale. So it's just lovely. Pleasure having you here. Folks, let me, and John, thank you for today, because it was a lovely start to the Coffee at 11 show for the week. Lovely way to kick it off. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you all very much. Thanks, everybody.
Folks, before I let you all go, let me just tell you what's happening in the tomorrow on the Coffee at 11 show. And it is a gentleman, Raymond Sexton is his name. And Raymond is an expat who's living down under. And Raymond is going to zoom in here tomorrow evening for him, 11 o'clock our time. And he's going to talk about his journey headed down under to reinvent. And he's done so at pace. And he himself has a network. It's called Tangible Ireland. And Tangible Ireland operates in Australia, in the Middle East, in the States, and here in Ireland and in the UK. So if you've got time tomorrow, pop back in. John, another good contact for you to make. Pop back in tomorrow. Yeah. And meet Raymond Sexton. I'd like to thank the team as ever. Princess Shelley, thank you for producing today's show. Always a pleasure. I'd like to thank Eamon Smith, aka The Monk, for keeping us safe and secure. Thank you for that. On the back of the wonderful work Liam Lynch did for us. Liam, you'll forever be remembered for that. And of course, in advance for Katrina O'Brien, our lovely editor-in-chief, who'll make this gorgeous for sharing out on social media this evening. And wigwam.ie SME peer support. And with that, I'd like to finally say, John Loftus, namaste.
Excellent, brilliant. I really enjoyed it.